I couldn't believe what I was seeing. Jagged metal spikes lined the edges of my daughter's wheelchair ramp, sharp, intentional, and dangerously placed. I pulled up the overnight security footage, and there she was. Our neighbor, Linda Travers, smug smile on her face, working under the cover of darkness like she was doing something righteous. She had no idea who I really was, or what was about to come her way. That morning, I woke to the sound of my daughter screaming. I raced outside to find 12-year-old Sophie frozen at the bottom of the ramp, tears streaming down her face. "Dad, be careful," she warned, her hands already scraped and red. The spikes weren't just dangerous, they were sadistic. I knelt down, heart pounding, trying to make sense of what I was looking at. We had fought for 6 months with the HOA to get this ramp approved. Sophie had been in a wheelchair ever since the car accident 3 years ago. That ramp meant freedom, dignity, and someone tried to turn it into a weapon. I helped her back inside, lifted her over the spikes, and promised I'd find out who did it. My hands shook as I took pictures of the damage. I knew this wasn't some random act. It was calculated. That ramp had been a hot topic at the HOA meeting the day before, where Linda, head of the board, called it an eyesore and claimed it cheapened the neighborhood. I called the police immediately. This could qualify as a hate crime, Officer Hughes told me while jotting notes into his pad. It's targeting her accessibility. I nodded and led him to my home office. I installed security cameras after the HOA first pushed back. "You're going to want to see this." The footage showed everything. Linda in dark clothing, gloves on, gluing down the spikes like she was installing crown molding. I sent a copy of the footage straight to Officer Hughes. Then I called my brother. "They went after Sophie," I told him. "It's time." He reminded me to stay methodical. "Build the case. Stay calm." For 20 years, I'd served as a federal judge, but I never expected to be using that experience to defend my own daughter's right to get into her own home. The next afternoon, Linda strutted down the sidewalk with 3 other HOA members in tow. They stopped in front of our house, pointed at the ramp, and didn't notice the new directional microphone I had mounted nearby. "The spikes were just phase 1, she said. "He'll have to remove that monstrosity now. It's like living next to a hospital." One of the men with her, Greg, tried to protest, but she cut him off cold. "Property values, Greg. My cousin's a lawyer. They can't pin anything on me." But I already had enough. I spent the rest of the day meeting with neighbors' families who had also clashed with Linda's so-called enforcement. The Garcias told me how she forced their son to remove his basketball hoop, even though he was being scouted for a scholarship. The Patels had been forced to repaint their door after she claimed the yellow was too ethnic. 12 families, 12 statements. A pattern of bullying, discrimination, and power abuse. A few days later, I called for an emergency HOA meeting. Linda couldn't refuse without looking guilty. Nearly the whole neighborhood showed up. I brought Sophie with me. People needed to see exactly who had been targeted. "This ramp," I began, standing beside her, "exists so my daughter can enter and exit our home without needing to be carried." I projected enlarged photos of the spikes. These were placed hurry night with the intention to harm her. Linda interrupted, scoffing. "While we don't condone vandalism, that ramp wasn't properly approved. It violates HOA standards." "The ramp meets every county building code," I replied, calmly. "Do HOA guidelines supersede federal law now, Linda?" She shot back. "We're enforcing aesthetics. We all signed an agreement when we moved here. My daughter's legal right to access her home isn't a question of aesthetics," I said, narrowing my eyes. "It's protected under federal law." Then I projected the video. The room went silent. Linda, in full view, installing those spikes with a self-satisfied grin. "This isn't about a ramp anymore," I said quietly. "This is criminal." After the meeting, Linda cornered me in the parking lot. "You've made a big mistake," she hissed. "That footage could have been altered. You'll hear from my attorney." "I hope I do," I replied. "Because the original footage is blockchain stamped and stored in 3 different locations. It's tamper-proof." The next morning, a courier arrived with a cease and desist letter from a law firm bearing Linda's cousin's name. The letter demanded we remove the ramp and all cameras facing common areas. It was full of legal nonsense and it violated the Americans with Disabilities Act. Later that day, Linda called. "We've scheduled an emergency vote to require monthly approval for all exterior modifications," she said, her voice smug. "Your little ramp will have to be reproved every 30 days. That's called targeted harassment." It applies to everyone equally, she shot back. If you can't keep up with the paperwork, that's your problem. That was the final straw. I made 3 calls. One to the ADA compliance office, one to a civil rights attorney I'd worked with on federal cases, and one to the local investigative news team. If Linda wanted a war, she picked the wrong family. The meeting was held at 4 p.m. on a workday, Linda's classic trick to keep attendance low. But the room was packed. Even more satisfying was the news van outside and the 2 professionals walking in beside me. When Linda tried to rush a vote on her new amendment, I stood up. This amendment violates the Fair Housing Act and the Americans with Disabilities Act, I said. And Linda Travers has committed a federal hate crime. Whispers erupted as I continued. I am Judge Matthew Keller of the United States District Court. The woman you elected has not only violated the law, she has endangered a child. My guests handed out folders to each board member. This, I said, includes evidence of systematic discrimination. The gentleman beside me is Special Agent Donnelly of the FBI Civil Rights Division. The woman to my left is ADA Compliance Director Maria Jimenez. Linda's face drained of color. You can't intimidate us with federal agents. This isn't intimidation. It's accountability. Agent Donnelly stepped forward. Linda Travers, you are under arrest for committing a hate crime. Her knees buckled as he read her rights. I turned to the stunned board. Resign now or you'll all be named in the federal lawsuit being filed tomorrow. Every member resigned on the spot. News of Linda's arrest went statewide. Her real estate business collapsed. The law firm disavowed her. 3 weeks later, she pled guilty to federal and state charges and was sentenced to a year in prison, followed by 5 years probation, a $75,000 fine, and 2,000 hours of community service, all at disability advocacy centers. Our HOA held new elections. The new board passed policies protecting accessibility modifications and banning discriminatory enforcement. 2 weekends later, I looked outside and saw dozens of neighbors unloading wood and tools onto our lawn. What's going on? Sophie asked. They're rebuilding your ramp, I told her. But they didn't just rebuild it. They transformed it, gentle curves, planter boxes, solar lights. Richard, the former board member, handed me an envelope. We raised enough to build an accessible playground in the park, he said. We'd like to name it after Sophie. 6 months later, Sophie cut the ribbon at the park's grand opening. The playground was the first of its kind in the county. It was a beacon of change. And Linda? After her release, she completed her court-ordered service at that same park. One day, she approached us quietly. I was wrong, she said. Working here changed me. Sophie looked her in the eyes. Everyone deserves a second chance. That's what Dad always says. Linda nodded. Your father is a wise judge. And you're an even wiser young lady. Sometimes, justice doesn't just punish. It transforms.